Another thing about Furnished Finder, it's a little different from Airbnb and VRBO. And I'm not sure if there are other companies like it. I haven't seen any, but I'm sure there are. They connect the homeowner and the renter. They connect them, but they don't like do actual booking services and stuff like that. So they'll show you, people in your area that are looking, that may not have reached out to you, but are looking for a similar property to yours. And then there's like a messaging feature that you can do back and forth. That's actually why we decided to get a third one, is because of the demand. So hopefully it's, keeps going like that.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! 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 Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Our guest today takes the record for the furthest distance away from the continental United States while recording an episode. Our guest today, Dr. Stephen Nellis, is an active duty Army family medicine physician and flight surgeon from the Midwest who's currently deployed to the Middle East. He took time out of his busy schedule to talk with us today all about midterm rentals and how you can also utilize a TSP loan if you have the availability to invest in a TSP, how you can use a TSP loan to cover the down payments or some closing costs or some real estate costs and transactions. It was a really cool episode. I learned a lot. I'm sure you will too. So without any further ado, let's jump right into today's episode. Dr. Stephen Nellis. Dr. Stephen Nellis, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. So glad that you're joining us here tonight. I will say you have set the record for furthest distance away from me in terms of recording a podcast episode. How are things going there in the Middle East?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's about 50 to 60 degrees right now. So it's feeling okay. I think it gets up to like 130 in the summer months. So trying to take advantage of it as I can.
Absolutely, man. Enjoy those cool temperatures while you can. Well, for folks who are joining us today, do you mind telling them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a family medicine trained Army doctor. I went to what was formerly known as Fort Bragg for my training, 3 years, and then I did a 6-week flight medicine course. And now I am a flight surgeon at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. So, and it's a little bit of a misnomer. I don't actually do surgery on flights. I'm more like the PCM for the pilots and the crew members.
That's awesome, man. What made you decide you wanted to go in the Army?
So, believe it or not, I was trying to go in the Navy, and then the Air Force wouldn't really talk to me because of some medical history. And then I ended up the Navy. Couldn't go through the Navy, and so finally the Army was like, "Hey, we need people." So
yeah.
It will take you, yeah. But it just really interested me. I think I went to like a marketing fair or something during med school, and they told me about the HPSP scholarship. I did a lot of research, and at the time I was unmarried and just kind of took the leap, kind of went from there.
That's awesome, man. And so Army physician, then ended residency. What was it like in residency in the Army? Any differences for folks if they're thinking about, hey, I want to do an Army residency program compared to a civilian? Is there anything in particular that sticks out for you?
So not particularly, because they do a pretty good job of, training you, and, the residency that I went to had a very prestigious research faculty and all that stuff. So I would say, they do add in a little bit of the Army specific stuff like operational medicine. And then you still have to do some of your Army requirements while you're there, PT test and, urine analysis if they call you and at 4:30 in the morning. But I think it was pretty comparable to civilian residency. You do get paid more for the only time compared to when you become an attending. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge benefit with the HPSP program to get med school paid for. And, a lot of folks, including myself, are really fortunate that we were able to graduate med school debt free. I was able to pay off undergrad with that little stipend that we get for the HPSP program. And I was really grateful to graduate med school debt free. That was a huge burden. And I will say that, that's a huge benefit. And the residency training is really, really good in the military, especially family medicine. I feel like we just get a lot more kind of broad spectrum family medicine and more, trauma and emergency medicine that you wouldn't typically get. And so really was grateful for that and grateful for the training. One thing I am not grateful for are the 430P tests, paying for your freedom, as we like to call it. And I won't be missing that. But there definitely were some pros to the military. Flight surgery is awesome. So I have a bunch of friends who are flight surgeons. I do have people in the Air Force community who still think that flight surgeons do surgery on airplanes, which you mentioned you don't do, but probably could in a pinch. What made you want to go down the flight surgery route?
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest. It was more about the location for me. It's Fort Campbell's really close to home, and which is Southern Indiana, Evansville. And kind of the main roles that they had a few flight surgeon roles. And so that was going to kind of be my way there. And I actually had two different, quote, 1-to-1 jobs lined up. One was to be a flight surgeon, and the other one was to kind of work in the Italian or the Brigade Support Battalion, which is kind of where a lot of the broken soldiers are. And so it's kind of weighing my options and knowing that I'm going to eventually get out in the next couple of years. I decided that I would rather, ride around on helicopters and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing about flight medicine is it's much more operationally focused for folks who don't know. And so I don't know about the Army flight medicine, but Air Force flight medicine, you're required to fly every month and you have to keep your flying hours, and you get to do a lot more cool operationally based things than typical, which is really awesome. I don't know if you know this or not, but I tried to cross over into flight medicine, and long story short, big Air Force family med was not willing to let me go, which was a bummer, but it is what it is. But flight medicine is a really cool opportunity in the Army, in the Air Force, get a lot more operationally based training and experience, probably deploy a little bit more, but get to do a lot more cool stuff to augment that. And a little bit less of kind of your day-to-day clinic grind. At least in the Air Force, you get to do a lot of shop visits, and you're taking care of the pilots and their families. And so you have a much smaller empanelment and those sorts of things as well, which I would imagine is probably pretty similar in the Army.
Yeah. There's a lot more administrative stuff we have to do in terms of flight physicals and stuff like that. So the number of patients aren't quite as much. And I'm operational, so I don't see the family members or anything like that. So it's just active duty. So it's kind of a small patient population in terms of, relatively healthy 20 to 40-year-olds. But I'm lucky that I get the chance to moonlight at a critical access hospital from time to time. So to kind of keep my skills up that way. Yeah. And yeah, the flight aspect is really cool. So not only like getting to do missions and stuff like that, but, if you know the right people, you can kind of do their fun stuff too. So I actually did a 5-day TDY to Chicago and was part of the helicopter flyovers of Wrigley Field during the 4th of July.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was super, super cool, especially as a big Cubs fan.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, sorry that you're a Cubs fan. I'm a Nationals fan, so I know how it goes to be disappointed and, lose all your best players in their prime. It is what it is. 2019 was a good year for us. That's cool, man. My 21st birthday, we actually celebrated at Wrigley Field, and I remember most of it, and it was a good time. That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Well, that is cool. Well, I think it's a good kind of summary for folks to understand, kind of the different pathways that you can take in the military, more clinical medicine, more operational medicine. There's a lot of different opportunities for folks, and definitely plenty of challenges in the military. Feel free to reach out to Stephen or myself, and we'll be more than happy to share those offline. But it's been some good training. It's been some good experiences. It sounds like the same for you. Probably be feeling a little bit better once you're back home in October, I'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I try to be an optimist. So I definitely have been able to take the good from, being in. A lot of people, I think you probably hear a lot of people that'll, say negative things, which a lot of them are warranted, right? But I just try and find the benefits of, being in.
Yeah, it goes by fast too. As we were talking before the call, man, I'm only really probably a month and a half away from not seeing patients anymore. And then I'm done May 2nd. So it's wild how fast time is going by. And then it's a whole different beast trying to figure out how to get a big boy job or what big boy job to take after. Because, you're like me, man. We've been told where to go, where to live for so long, and what we're going to do and what's the job going to look like. And then now it's really all the opportunities are open. So we'll see. Looking forward to it. We're staying in the Springs, probably working in a direct primary care practice, but we'll see what happens there and looking forward to it. But anyways, this isn't about me at all. It's just been fun to reflect as getting closer to end and go from there. Hey, let's talk about your interest in personal finance. I know you had an interest in personal finance for quite some time and you were able to be pretty creative with the TSP loan. So let's talk a bit more about those.
Yeah, so I actually got into personal finance when actually I was applying for the HPSP scholarship. So while I was reading through the different forums, trying to get the good and the bad, I actually ran into someone you might be familiar with, the White Coat Investor. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole from there, that got me onto like Bogleheads. I read the Bogleheads Guide to Investing, Walk Down Wall Street, Simple Path to Investing, that sort of thing. Just kind of, took on personal finance as a hobby. So didn't do too much except for, contributing regularly to Roth IRA, my TSP, and the BRS program, the 5% match. So it wasn't until I went to buy my first house, my first primary residence, that I looked into the TSP loan, which is really a good deal. It's kind of like a 401k loan where you take it out. It charges you interest up to like whatever the G fund is. So 2 to 5%. But the good part is that the interest that you pay goes into your TSP. So in reality, you're kind of paying interest to yourself. You're not paying interest to a third party or anything like that. So I was able to do that. And then I also ended up using that strategy for my other properties as well, which, we can get into.
Yeah, absolutely. So the TSP loan, basically you're taking a loan off your balance of your TSP, and then you owe interest back on that loan that you just pay back to yourself, essentially.
Yeah. From my understanding, so you can take up to half of your contributions or 50,000, whatever is lower. And you can take it as a general loan where it's like no questions asked, or you can take it in order to pay for a property or residence. And the difference between those two is if you're doing it no questions asked, you have to pay it back within 5 years. If you're doing it for a residence, you have to pay it back in 15 years. And this all has to be done. You have to do the payback within 90 days of getting out of the military. So I'm sure it's something that you can also take advantage, like if you're in the, if you're a federal worker or something with the TS, but I can't really speak to that.
Sure. That's really cool. So did you use the TSP loan for the down payment on the primary?
Yeah, I did. So actually, so it was a VA loan. So there wasn't actually a down payment, but just when I bought, it was, it was May 2022. So things were getting crazy. Houses were flying off the market and buyers were paying all the closing costs and stuff like that. So I actually used it to pay closing costs and the VA fee that you have to pay whenever you get a VA loan.
Nice. The funding fee. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah. What a cool way to get in with really not, no money out of your pocket, kind of, which is cool, money that you wouldn't typically have access to otherwise. I think, things for folks that are listening here that is really cool. And something that I think that is really important for military physicians to know is really I don't think a reason why any military physician shouldn't leave the military as a millionaire through real estate for a few reasons, because of a few options. One, the VA loan, no money down, absolutely amazing. You can have up to 4 units on a VA loan. So you could buy a quadplex, live in 1 unit, and then have the other 3 units pay you cash flow. So basically you're making money to live, which is amazing. You can also get a no money down physician loan, which actually doesn't even have a funding fee. So I argue with my buddy Dave Perret from Military to Millionaire quite often because he thinks the VA loan's the best loan product that exists. I think a physician loan is the best loan product that exists, especially from a primary residence perspective. But a physician loan, you can't get multiple units on it. It's got to be just a single family house, which can still work well in residency because you could still house hack. I tell residents, think about getting a house during residency and renting it out to all your residency mates, and then they just pay you and you make money while you're in residency and live for free. It's a pretty awesome way to do it. So I think between those two options, and you can utilize both of those as a military physician, like you could easily stack up 4, 5, 6 units pretty easy during your active duty service time. And then you're a millionaire before you get out just from your real estate, which is pretty wild. So just something for folks to think about when they're listening to this and they hear the VA loan and the physician loan, and then the TSP loan offers a whole other kind of layer to that as well, which is really awesome. So thanks for bringing that up, Stephen.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, about the whole like house hacking and everything like that. That probably would have been something I was interested in, but just with, we had during internship and COVID hit at the same time as well. And so we kind of waited a little bit to buy until I got to my first duty station after residency. But, if I was a single guy, I probably would have been, trying to house hack and do all those things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. How was having a baby during intern year and a pandemic?
Yeah, it was tough. So yeah, we had my son Liam in December of 2019 during my first year of internship. And then, as you know, COVID hit about February, March of 2020. So it was pretty tough, especially for my wife. We were 1,000 miles from home. Everyone was on lockdown. It was just her and the baby for the most part because I was in residency. So actually, I think I was working inpatient nights, the month after he was born. Actually, funny story. So when my son was born, I was working in the newborn nursery. So then it was either the day or the second day after he was born. I stayed in my wife's room in the nursery, woke up, put my scrubs on, and rounded on all the other patients.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, you're right there. Yeah, we had our son Jack at the hospital I did residency at in Eglin in 2020. So also during COVID, it was a really interesting time. But I remember the doc, I think he was joking. He was one of our faculty docs. He was like, "Hey, do you want to do the circumcision on your son?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Haven't slept at all. Yeah. And I don't want to be responsible for the outcome of that." But
I had the same conversation. I was like, "Nope, that's all you."
Yeah, exactly. I was like, "Hey, I actually want you to take the baby and give us like 30 minutes of uninterrupted sleep while this is happening." So yeah, man. Well, that's tough, but I'm glad things worked out. It was, what an interesting time. And being in residency and being in the military, and the pandemic was interesting experience. That's for sure. That we'll never forget and hopefully never have to repeat. But neither here nor there, I guess, from that perspective. So going back to the primary, your first real estate transaction and using the TSP loan and the VA loan, what was next for you moving forward in your real estate journey?
So like I said, we moved to Fort Campbell to kind of, be closer to family. We lived about an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes from our family. And we had, one young son, another one on the way. So we really wanted to go up and see them as much as possible and them come see us. We ended up going more than they came to visit us. Oh, I think they're playing the alarm. But
Wake up.
Yeah, exactly. So after going up there so many times, we realized there wasn't a lot of space for us to go, and we go up there. And one time we got an Airbnb for about a week. It was like during Christmas time. And it's like, wow, this is really nice being up here, having a whole house to ourselves. I was like, well, maybe we should just, try and buy something. So what I ended up doing is we found a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom kind of small house, and I got it as a secondary residence. So I don't know if you ever had any experience with those, but you only have to put 10% down. So I was able to do that.
Awesome.
Utilizing the TSP loan as well. And so we did that, and we would it was mostly furnished because I didn't want to have to deal with that when we go up there. And so after we started going up there, staying there, and then we're like, well, we're only coming up here about once a month. So what do we do in the meantime? And that's when we started renting it out. So started using kind of Airbnb and Evolve, which is a online property management service. It's pretty cool. They'll they'll do your booking schedule. They'll, talk to clients for you and all that stuff. So that was pretty cool. But at some point I ran into this website called Furnished Finder, which tailors to travel healthcare, specifically travel nursing, and then also does, other midterm stays. I think their minimum is like 30 days. Their max can be a year lease. So like contractors, insurance agencies who their clients get displaced from flood, fire, stuff like that. So I ended up starting using that, and I haven't had a vacancy since. So
That's awesome.
yeah. And because, it's furnished and I pay utilities and everything, the going rate is about 1.5 to 2 times the long-term rental rate. And yeah, so that was my first house. And then I kind of did like a rinse and repeat with another house in the same area. It was a little bit tricky because I did use the secondary home loan again with the idea that, our family is expanded. We need a bigger house and turn the other one into an investment property. And, that made sense to them. So we did the same thing, got a bigger house, fully furnished. I bought the furnishing again from the seller. So I didn't really have to deal too much with that. And then, we visited there. Whenever we visited there, we stayed there and then started renting it out the other times. So, and it turns out, funny enough, is we got the houses so we had a place to stay when we go up there. But when we go up there, they're usually booked out. So we usually end up getting a hotel for a day or two.
Got to buy another one, man.
Well, good segue. We just closed on our third one. That one I actually bought as a investment property. Couldn't really swing the secondary home loan anymore. I think if they're within 50 miles of each other, you can't do more than one or two. So, but yeah, that one, they're all rented out right now. That one I bought the furnishing as well. It was actually an old Airbnb that the seller was trying to offload. So it was pretty quick turnaround. I think I got someone in there within the next week after I closed.
That's awesome, man. Did you close on that while you were deployed?
I closed on it about 4 days before I deployed. We tried to.
Okay, well, still really cool story.
Yeah. We really tried to do that, and then and all this wouldn't be possible if I didn't have my cousin is a real estate agent. She actually is the one that sold me the houses, and then she also does some property management for me. So this wouldn't be possible without her as well, because my wife's at home with the kids and she does not want to deal with that.
Yeah, she's working 2 full-time jobs right now with you going, exactly. For sure. And I'm sure she doesn't want to deal with tenants and toilets and all that good stuff while you're gone.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome, Stephen. Well, yeah, we love midterm rentals. I think it's such a great way to get into the market, to get more cash flow than the long-term rental without all the headaches of a short-term rental. And so, I think about the cash flow in terms of you make more cash flow when you solve more expensive problems, and like a short-term rental makes more cash flow, but you're definitely having more expensive problems and more frequent problems. And then the midterm rental is right in the middle. And then the long-term rental, it's the easiest, it's the most passive, but you make the least amount. We actually midterm rent our basement here in Colorado Springs, and let's live basically mortgage and insurance free and taxes for free. It's all covered by the Airbnb, which is awesome. So folks listening, like there's other ways that you can kind of use your single family property. We just have a separate, walkout in the basement. It's a separate basement apartment, and we midterm rent that. So it's a great opportunity for folks as well, or it can do exactly what you've done, which is amazing. What have been some challenges that you've learned with these 3 midterm rentals, or what are some things that you wish you knew beforehand?
So specifically challenges, I would say, just kind of dealing with the different, mortgage companies. I know I have, kind of looked into some of the more creative finances, but I just kind of went the traditional route. But, traditional mortgages, like they really want to know everything about you financially, and it's a really long process. And I've worked with some good mortgage lenders, but it definitely is a process. And then I'm pretty lucky with my tenants. I've only really had one recently that has kind of, that's really why I like the midterm rentals, specifically Furnished Finder and traveling healthcare, traveling contractors, because one, they will do like a background check for you. But really, I feel like these people kind of, the fact that they're traveling healthcare, traveling, construction worker or insurance company, there's kind of that, you already kind of have that, background check, or, they're coming in, they're professionals. And I really have only had one issue with one tenant for the most part. And the great thing I like about the healthcare renters as well. So they typically rent for about 3 months, and then sometimes they'll extend. So I've had people stay for 6 months at a time. So it's, same rate. and you don't have those turnover costs that you have with Airbnb. And a lot of times, they'll go home for a week or out of the month or something like that. So, utilities aren't crazy usually, and the house is well maintained. You know that no one's going to be like throwing big parties there and stuff like that. So I think I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't had to deal with like a lot of toilets overflowing and stuff like that. But for all my properties, I have a home warranty company policy, I should say. And that has helped me out many times as well. I will say this, I do wish I was a little bit more handy. So maybe I could, help with some things. My wife is actually the one that's a little bit more handy, and she's done some things around the houses.
Nice. Yeah. My wife is probably a little bit handier than I am as well, which I hate to admit, but it's true. And that's why we make a good pair. That's awesome, man. Yeah, you hit definitely that was a really good summary of why midterm rentals can be really good. We've had way better experiences overall with midterm renting than we have had with short-term renting. And it is definitely worth the 20% decrease in cash flow. And so it's just also really nice to know, like, hey, this is just rented for 3 months or 6 months, and I don't have to worry about, bookings coming in and filtering through potential bookings and those sorts of things as well. One thing I will say that I've noticed, at least here in Colorado Springs, is that it seems like a lot more folks are looking for midterm rentals on Airbnb here. And so we kind of adjusted our pricing. We realized like, hey, we're not getting anyone interested in booking through Airbnb or VRBO for midterm rental. So we looked and we're like, oh, that's because of the daily rate so high. Like if we were to calculate this out for a whole month or for 6 months, it's going to be insane. Like no one's going to pay $7,000 a month to live in a basement apartment. So once we adjusted that and then we added like a discount for weekly stays and monthly stays, we actually get the majority of our midterm bookings through Airbnb right now, which has been interesting. We love Furnished Finder as well, but for some reason it seemed like that we just were getting less demand from Furnished Finder and more from Airbnb. And, I'm sure it's location specific, but just something for folks who are listening to take a look at and see like, hey, is my average daily rate just so high that then there's no discount? So then a weekly or monthly is just unreasonable, something to think about.
Yeah. And I think in Furnished Finder too, a lot of people, they're looking for full units or full houses because they're usually, bringing their family or dogs and stuff like that. And so they're probably a little bit more and, understandable. They're going to be somewhere for, 3+ months. They want it to feel like home. So I think that's one of the reasons I've had some success because I just have the full units, full houses. And yeah, so another thing about Furnished Finder, it's a little different from Airbnb and VRBO. And I'm not sure if there are other companies like it. I haven't seen any, but I'm sure there are. But they connect the homeowner and the renter. They connect them, but they don't like do actual booking services and stuff like that. So they connect you guys, and it's really nice. They'll show you, people in your area that are looking, that may not have reached out to you, but are looking for a similar property to yours. And then there's like a messaging feature that you can do back and forth. And it's been really, really helpful. I've had to turn down more people than I've accepted because, I get, a bunch of inquiries and I'm like, so cause sometimes the calendar doesn't update. And so I have a person staying there, but someone sees that and they're like, hey, can we get in? So that's actually why we decided to get a third one is because of the demand. So hopefully it's, keeps going like that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, that's a great problem to have. What's next for you in your real estate journey? You think you got a fourth one coming up soon?
We'll see. So I'm going to move back there when I get out. So about 1.5 years. So my primary residence, I've got to, decide if we want to rent it out or sell it. I'm leaning towards doing like a long-term rental because we have a beautiful 3.25% interest rate on that. And I don't know if we'll see that again. But so, it's kind of hard to sell, to get rid of that one, but I may turn that into investment property. And then I don't know if I'm going to get much bigger just because, still need to figure out what we're going to do when we get out of the military is, where I'm going to work, what I'm going to do. But, I have you guys, actually, you, Tyler, kind of piqued my interest in like the assisted living space, stuff like that. So I think that's something I'm going to look into a little bit more and see if I can learn enough to maybe get into that or something more commercial potentially.
Awesome, man. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love residential assisted living as everyone that listens to this podcast knows for sure. So I'm more than happy to help you out any step of the way there. And got a bunch of resources, of course, too, for assisted living. I think that's an amazing opportunity in real estate investing, if not the best one now and for decades to come. I do think midterm rentals are also amazing. The other thing that we didn't even hit on that's a huge pro of midterm rentals is the regulations piece. And typically you're kind of shielded from the regulation aspect of short-term rentals with different crackdowns. We've all heard about different cities like Nashville and so forth that are cracking down on short-term rentals and basically taking away your ability to rent that home out as a short-term rental. And a lot of people didn't underwrite those properties based off of, hey, could I rent this out as a long-term or a midterm? And so they're in a difficult spot. And so midterm rental, kind of shields you from those regulation risks as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there's some extra fees as well associated with short-term rentals. Sometimes they have to pay to the county or the city that I don't think long-term rentals are not.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. We have a short-term rental in the mountains of Colorado, and the first year, the license, I think, was $100 or maybe $200. And it's now $1,800 for 2 years. So $900 to get a license. And they just know they can charge whatever they want. And people are going to do it, and tourism's big in that area. So you just have to do it. But yeah, it is interesting how things shake out like that. But well, Stephen, I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's a completely different time zone there, and your day is really about to get started. So want to be respectful of your time and appreciate you waking up early. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit on that we didn't before we wrap things up?
Not particularly. I do think another interesting piece is where I'm buying my housing is. So it's like Midwest. So I'll be honest, I don't do a lot of market research and like the different, coasts and stuff like that. But, I have been hearing like the Midwest is kind of a good place to buy and hold. So I think that's another reason why I've been successful is just kind of tapping into a market that's not really, it's not really touristy. No one really comes down to Southern Indiana for many reasons other than to work. So, and I just kind of fell into that area because that's where I'm from. So, but, I think a lot of people are, if they're looking to buy, to do something similar, don't try and do like the Nashvilles and the, Carolina, stuff like that. Colorado's worked out too, but I'm sure it's oversaturated as well. So maybe finding some places that aren't super saturated can be good. And the properties that I'm purchasing, they're not major properties in terms of price. I'm like, probably average about $150,000, which is about a $15,000 to $20,000 down payment for the vacation or secondary homes. So, but it makes it accessible too, and the cash flow too. In the Midwest is going to be pretty steady, pretty stable. You might get less appreciation, of course, in some of those coastal markets or some of the hotter markets, but it's a lot harder to buy 4 homes if you're paying $600,000 per home than if you're paying $150,000. And if you're chasing after cash flow, it's a really great way to do it. And I think a cool thing that you brought up is midterm rentals, man. They can work pretty much in every market. And it's helpful to know what's the demographic base and what's the workforce base, so you can kind of tailor to that. Like I know some folks who have a bunch of midterm rentals in like oil boom towns in Texas and some in North Dakota for the same reason. And they just essentially have partnered with these oil companies and they house their workers, and that's that. And so there's a lot of cool ways that you can do that. You can provide that housing, and it's cheaper for these companies to put folks in these midterm rentals than it is to pay for like an extended stay hotel. And so it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, if folks want to reach out to you, they want to know more, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm actually not really present on social media, but I'm happy to, take any questions via email, steven.Mike.Nellis@gmail.com. So firstname.m.lastname@gmail.com. Awesome.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes there. Folks want to reach out to you, learn more about midterm rentals, TSP loan. You're the guy, and that is awesome. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the podcast all the way from deployment. Pray everything's safe out there, man, and that October comes here before you know it.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Well, with that, it's been Dr. Stephen Nellis and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.